Welcome to Revenge Report. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let's dive in. Checklist confirmed. All conditions met. I stood up so fast the wooden bench screeched behind me, breaking the silence like a gunshot. My palms were sweating, but I didn't wipe them. I wanted the judge to see me exactly as I was, controlled, dangerous, and done playing nice. File light 12, I said clearly into the stale courtroom air. That was the moment everything shifted. Judge Patrick Nolan flinched, not a twitch, a full-body jolt like someone jammed a live wire down his spine. His eyes shot to my father, then back to me, then back again. Gregory Kellerman, the man who used to pretend nothing could ever touch him, went pale. His jaw clenched so hard I thought he'd grind his molars to dust. My name is Dana Kellerman. I'm 36, former arson investigator with the Bureau of State Fire Services, and I was being sued by my own damn father in a 2-room courthouse in Crest Hill, Pennsylvania, population 4,000 and change. Quick note, before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? Anyway, this whole circus, it was about my inheritance. My mother died 5 years ago, left me her house, the land, and every cent she squirreled away from her own dental practice. Not a dime for him, and he never forgave her for that. Said the will must have been influenced. Said I wasn't mentally sound after what happened at FILELIGHT 12. But I knew what this really was. Power. My father didn't give a damn about the estate. He just couldn't stomach the idea that I walked out of that fire while his good name didn't. I looked around. The courtroom smelled like old carpet and lemon disinfectant. My lawyer, Miss Barrett, was still seated, tight-lipped. She told me not to push buttons, told me to stick to facts and let her handle the legal play. But I wasn't here to play. I was here to end it. Nolan leaned forward, fingers twitching near his gavel. Miss Kellerman, you're dangerously close to contempt. I smiled. Say it again, loudly, into the record, dead silence, not a foot shuffle, not a cough. Then a chair scraped from the back row. An officer in uniform stood up, his face pale, eyes wide. He whispered something to the deputy beside him, then walked out. That's when Nolan cracked. His voice wavered. What do you think you're doing, bringing classified operations into a civil trial? I didn't answer. I just looked at my father, and for the first time in my life, he looked afraid. I sat back down slowly, didn't blink. Let the weight of those 2 words settle like smoke. And that was just the start. 3 years earlier, I stood outside a warehouse in the outskirts of Camden, New Jersey, staring at data that didn't add up. We were about to enter what would later be known as FILELIGHT 12. The official call was possible insurance fraud, potential arson. But the moment I looked at the files, I knew something was off. The security footage came in too clean. No camera glitches, no weather interference. Which didn't make sense because the satellite logs said there were heavy storms that night. The timestamps didn't match the local utility grid shutdowns. Someone was stitching this story together like a damn quilt. I flagged it. Sent a formal request for a delay to verify the storm data against the satellite thermal scans. It was denied. Then I asked for confirmation of the 2 eyewitness accounts they claimed to have. Just names. Something. Also denied. They pushed us to move. Time sensitive, they said. Liability window, they said. Always some bureaucratic crap hiding the truth. So I went in, with 6 people under me, 3 bureau agents, 2 city firefighters, and 1 medic named Palmer, sharp as hell and always calm under pressure. We did our own final sweep before entry. My guy Simmons noted the air pressure sensors were flatlining, even though external gauges read normal. I asked to pause. My radio buzzed. Proceed immediately. Orders are final. I hesitated. Not long. Maybe 5 seconds. But I felt it in my chest. That weight of knowing you're about to step into something wrong, and stepping anyway because you're the one in charge. We breached the east entry. It was quiet. Too quiet. You could smell the insulation cooking in the walls. That chemical burn smell, sharp and fake. I ordered thermal sweeps. Nothing showed beyond some leftover heat signatures. Then Simmons said, no airflow on the 2nd level. 0 circulation. That's when the door behind us slammed. Loud. Metal on metal. Move, I shouted. We started back toward the breach point, but it was already locked. Palmer reached for the override panel. He never made it. The floor buckled underneath him. I don't remember hearing the first blast. I remember the concussion knocking me flat. Concrete bit into my jaw. Then the second ignition hit. A directional blast like someone angled it, screaming. Somewhere behind me, one of the firefighters, Reyes, was yelling someone's name. I crawled toward Palmer, found him pinned under twisted steel piping. My gloves melted from the heat. I grabbed bare metal. That's how I got the scar on my hand, the one that still makes people stare when I shake with my left. I couldn't move him. I tried. But then the beams above us groaned. That slow, heavy metal sound you never forget. I had to leave him. Simmons was already gone. Two others unresponsive. One agent, Tansy, made it out behind me. Alive, but barely breathing. She still can't walk. Permanent nerve damage. 4 dead, 1 disabled. And me? I was the only one who walked out capable of working again. I gave my full report, but no one touched the weather log errors. No one followed up on the sealed maintenance records. Weeks passed, and the investigation just vanished. Like it never happened. The name FILELIGHT 12 was never filed publicly, but I remembered every detail, every face, every scream. Every time my father claimed I was unfit, unstable, too damaged to handle a job. This is what he was pointing at. But what no one knew was this. I didn't just survive. I remembered everything, and I wasn't letting it go. The media dragged FILELIGHT 12 for 6 straight weeks, just long enough for the public to forget the details and remember only the wreckage. It didn't take long for my father to move in. He waited until the smoke had settled, literally, and then hit me with court papers. Petition to challenge the distribution of Elizabeth Kellerman's estate on the grounds of psychological instability. His wording, not mine. My mother's will was ironclad. She'd left everything to me, the family land, the 2-story brick house with the wraparound porch, and every dollar in her personal savings. She hadn't trusted him for years. Even on her worst chemo days, she whispered to me about hidden documents and backup copies. But none of that stopped him. And of course, the judge handling the claim was his old hunting buddy from Erie, retired once, brought back for special matters. They used to sit in tree stands for hours, sipping from flasks and bragging about their kids. Now here he was, in a black robe, pretending he didn't know my father personally, while smiling at him like they shared an inside joke. I showed up to the first hearing in my full bureau dress blues. Thought it'd make a point. Didn't matter. Their lawyer, some smug kid in a too-tight suit, came in swinging with claims of mental strain, unprocessed grief, and career-ending trauma. They cited a 2-line medical note from the Bureau's internal psych that said I'd requested time off for exhaustion. They twisted it into a breakdown. When I confronted my father after the hearing, he stood in front of his new wife like a shield. She was tall, glossy, and perfectly composed, like she'd stepped out of a campaign poster. Marlene. Her smile never touched her eyes. I said, "You really filed this?" He didn't blink. "It's not personal, Dana. It's optics. People talk. If the estate passes to you in your condition—" "My condition?" I stepped in, inches from him. "You mean surviving something you didn't even ask me about?" He looked past me, like I wasn't there. "You need rest, not responsibility." His new wife rested a polished hand on his shoulder. "We're just thinking long-term. Stability matters." That's when I knew. This wasn't about protecting me, it was about rewriting the story, making me the unstable one, making him the poor, concerned father who had to take legal action because his daughter wasn't well. They had plans. Maybe a congressional run, maybe a state seat. Either way, having a daughter tied to a public tragedy, one with 4 dead bodies, didn't fit the branding. He used to tell me I had his fire. Now he wanted to bury it. I filed every counter motion I could. My lawyer, Miss Barrett, warned me early. They've got influence. Old favors. We'll fight, but it's not a fair fight. She wasn't wrong. Every document I submitted, my clean service record, the commendation letters, even video footage showing I tried to pull Palmer out, was labeled inadmissible or irrelevant. And through it all, my father kept showing up in court with the same damn smile, like he'd already won. I stopped speaking to him after the second hearing, refused to meet, call, respond. Let my lawyer handle everything. I had nothing left to say to a man who saw my trauma as leverage. He didn't just question my fitness, he tried to erase the only thing I had left from my mother. And for that, I was going to make damn sure he never forgot who I was. The courtroom smelled like stale coffee and warm dust, and it was packed tighter than usual. The hearing had dragged into day 3, and the walls felt like they were closing in. Judge Nolan slouched in his chair, robe loose, eyes half-lidded like this was a damn book club, not a legal hearing about stripping me of my mother's estate. My father sat like a statue 2 rows from the bench. Marlene had that same campaign smile glued on, like she already had the victory speech typed out. Then came their lawyer, Gentry, smug, loud, and too rehearsed. He moved like he was auditioning for something bigger. Your Honor, we'd like to submit Exhibit G, a psychological evaluation from Dr. Cass Winlow, dated 6 months after the incident at Firelight 12. It clearly states Miss Kellerman exhibited signs of unresolved PTSD and workplace delusions. Miss Barrett shot up. Objection. That report was never conducted. Dr. Winlow never evaluated my client, and we have sworn statements confirming that Nolan barely lifted his chin. Overruled. The report stands Barrett's jaw clenched, but she sat down. I could tell she was already 3 moves ahead, but the board was rigged. We both knew it. They rolled out a stack of secondhand junk, a report from a bureau contractor who'd been fired for misconduct, a professional opinion from a therapist I'd never met, statements from neighbors who said I was quiet and unapproachable. That last one actually made Gentry smile like he'd caught me committing arson in my own kitchen. Barrett kept objecting. Unfounded. Irrelevant. Inadmissible. Each time Nolan gave her that same lazy wave. Overruled. Then they brought in a witness I hadn't expected. Retired Fire Chief Frank Leary. He used to lead training courses for new hires. I'd done drills under him back when I was 23. The man could barely climb stairs by the time he retired, but now here he was, hair slicked back, suit way too new, taking the stand like he knew something. I reviewed the Firelight 12 logs, he said confidently, and the data clearly shows no atmospheric anomalies. In fact, I see no evidence that a delay was warranted. In my opinion, Kellerman entered recklessly. Barrett stood. Your Honor, this directly contradicts official bureau documents. Overruled, Nolan cut in, voice firm for the first time all morning. I didn't move, didn't flinch, just sat there and let them stack lie on top of lie. Let the game play out. Because I already knew when I was going to flip the board. In the gallery, maybe 3 rows back, I saw movement. An older man, maybe 60s, long gray coat, military-style posture, kept glancing down at my left hand. The one I kept tucked under my case file. The burn scars still twisted across the knuckles like melted rope. I caught his eye. He didn't look away. Across the aisle, a younger woman was scribbling in a notebook so fast her pen squeaked. She looked like a reporter. Late 20s, sharp brown bob, oversized blazer. Probably hoping for some tearful family implosion. But then she froze mid-sentence. Head tilted. Something had clicked. She glanced from the fire chief, back to the projector slide of the warehouse blueprint, then to me. Yeah, she saw it too. Nolan leaned in. Miss Kellerman, do you wish to respond to Chief Leary's statement? I stood slowly, hands flat on the desk. No, Your Honor, I said. Not yet. The woman in the blazer stopped writing altogether. The older man leaned forward in his seat like he already knew what was coming. Let them talk. Let them dig their hole with both hands. They thought I was boxed in, but I'd brought my own match. Judge Nolan leaned over his desk like a man who thought gravity didn't apply to him. He tapped the gavel once, slow and smug, like the sound meant something. In light of the evidence presented, he said, drawing out every syllable, this tribunal recommends Dana Kellerman be permanently barred from re-entering active investigative duty in any agency, federal or state. He paused, made sure the gallery was listening. You'll never wear a badge again. That's when I stood. No reaction, no rebuttal. I just pushed the chair back, let the feet screech across the tile like a warning. Miss, Barrett whispered, Dana, don't. I walked past her, straight to the mic in front of the bench, looked Nolan in the eye. Let the weight of the moment drag out just a second longer. Then I said it. Firelight 12. Not a shout, not a scream. Just clean, quiet, clear. The room didn't explode, it dropped. A stillness hit the courtroom like oxygen had been pulled out of the air. The gallery froze. Paper rustled somewhere, but no one moved. In the back, one of the uniformed officers turned his head slowly, like he'd misheard. Then he leaned toward the bailiff and whispered something. The bailiff's eyes went wide. The officer stood up, walked briskly to the exit, and slipped out without a word. That's when Nolan's gavel slipped from his hand and clattered off the bench. He gripped the edge of the desk. Miss? Kellerman, what the hell did you just say? I didn't blink. You heard me. Explain yourself. No. Gasps. 1, maybe 2. But I kept my eyes on him. He was sweating now. Real sweat, upper lip twitching. He glanced toward Gentry, who was now flipping through his notes like they'd suddenly turned to another language. From the gallery, the older man sat forward with purpose. He knew. His stare locked on mine, a flicker of recognition there. The young woman, the one with the blazer and the notebook, dropped her pen. Her hand went to her mouth like she'd just put something together. You can't just say that name in a courtroom. Nolan's voice cracked. I said nothing. He slammed his hand on the bench. This is a civil matter. Classified content has no place in these proceedings. You're treading into federal violation territory. Still, I stood there. No flinch, no apology. In the gallery, someone finally moved. A man in plain clothes stepped out and whispered to the deputy. The deputy looked stunned, nodded, and started toward the hallway. Security protocol was being activated. I could hear it in the quiet clicks and murmurs near the back. A woman with a headset entered through a side door. She spoke quietly into her mic and started scanning the room. Nolan caught it all. Who the hell called for federal response? No one answered. He tried to regain control, picked up his gavel, raised it. Judge Nolan, a calm voice interrupted from the gallery. You need to recess. Now Nolan turned toward the voice. It was the older man. He stood slowly, pulling out a badge from under his coat. Not state, not local. Federal. Nolan stared like he didn't believe it, but his hand dropped, and he looked back at me. What have you done? I stepped away from the mic. What you always feared. Marlene looked panicked for the first time. She clutched my father's arm, whispering hard and fast. My father didn't say a word, just stared at me with a blank, broken expression, like someone had changed the script mid-scene and he'd forgotten his lines. Judge Nolan cleared his throat. Court will recess until further. But the woman with the headset was already motioning for the room to be cleared. Officers moved through the aisles now, firm but quiet, directing people out. As I walked back to my seat, Barrett looked up at me, shaken. That phrase, that was a trigger code, wasn't it? I didn't answer. Didn't need to. As the courtroom cleared and the officers started sealing the exits, I didn't watch them. I watched the exit sign glow red above the door. That same color burned into my memory from 3 years ago, from that warehouse on the edge of Camden, where everything went wrong. We called it FILELIGHT 12, but internally, it was just a slow kill. I can still hear the static over the comms before we went in. Simmons and Palmer were crouched next to me, checking our gear. Nothing fancy, just basic entry, environmental sweep, structure check. The others spread out near the loading dock doors. Tansy, Torres, Beck, Hines, solid team. We'd trained together, worked 3 fires that month. We moved like we were wired into each other's brains. But that day, something didn't feel right. Palmer was the first to say it. Gauge readings are too clean, he muttered, eyes on the portable monitor. 0 pressure shift across all 4 entries. Not even a pocket drift? Simmons double-checked. Yeah, that's a lie. There's airflow. Just not here. I tapped my radio. Control, this is Alpha 1. We've got flatline air pressure across a sealed structure. Requesting hold for a secondary scan. The response came back fast. Too fast. Alpha 1, you are cleared for entry. Proceed immediately. I repeated the warning. Gauges read artificial. We need orders are final. Go, that voice wasn't our usual dispatcher. And it wasn't protocol to override on a first-pass scan, but if I refused, that went on record. So I looked at my team. 6 of us total. I gave the nod. We breached at 9:47. The interior was silent, bone-cold and dry. No settling dust, no rodent noise, no ticking metal, just a dead warehouse. Tansy moved to the center support beam while Palmer scanned the ceiling joints. Nothing's breathing in here, he said. Feels like a set. That's when it started. Beck slipped on something. Not oil. It was too slick, too clean. She wiped her glove and stared at it. This isn't motor fluid. I moved to the west wall. A panel was hanging open. Wires exposed. Looked accidental. But the cuts were surgical. Not a single fray. I radioed in again. Confirm maintenance records for structure 12. Static. Then. Alpha 1, Proceed with visual confirmation of suspected ignition points. Palmer looked up at me. They're not even listening, are they? I shook my head. At 9:59, everything blew. First came the directional burst from the northeast corner, right where Simmons had moved to check the support bracket. He didn't even scream. Then the pressure shifted and the second blast tore through the main corridor. Palmer and I were closest. We hit the floor. Flames chased oxygen in waves. I saw Tansy get thrown against the far wall. Torres was yelling. Hines went silent. Just gone. The room pulsed like it was alive. Hot, choking, sharp-smelling fire with that chemical twist no real fire ever carries. Palmer was trapped under a crumpled beam, legs pinned, coughing hard. I grabbed him, gloves melting as I reached under the steel. That's when my palm hit exposed metal, and it seared right through the skin. He looked at me. Go! I didn't listen. I hauled until my arm gave out. Then the ceiling groaned, in one of those deep guttural cracks that says now or never. He shoved me. Go! I ran. I came out the side breech door just as the third ignition collapsed the eastern roof. I turned back. No exit, no second wave. Just smoke and silence. 4 gone, 1 never walked again. And me? I got labeled a survivor. But I knew the truth. That fire wasn't faulty wiring. It wasn't heat fatigue. It was designed. It was staged. No way a place that perfectly quiet, that surgically wired, just failed. Somebody wanted it to look like an accident. Somebody wanted us dead. And I swore, right there in the dirt outside that warehouse, staring at my shredded gloves and melted skin, I'd carry every one of their names with me, even if no one else did. They called the tribunal back in 23 minutes later, but Judge Nolan didn't return. Instead, the doors opened and a woman in a dark charcoal suit walked in like the room already belonged to her. Clean lines, short-cropped blonde hair, no makeup, no hesitation. She carried a black folder in one hand and a laminated ID clipped to her jacket that read, Diana Laramie, Federal Oversight, Strategic Crimes Division. She took the bench without ceremony, no robe, no preamble, just facts. My name is Diana Laramie, she said. Effective immediately, I've been assigned interim authority over these proceedings. Due to a high-priority federal trigger event, this case has been reclassified. She paused, scanning the courtroom like she was counting every person, every breath. This hearing and all materials associated with it now fall under Section 12 of the National Security Integrity Protocol. Any notes, recordings, or devices must be surrendered. You will comply or be detained. Nobody moved. Then the plainclothes agents entered. 4 of them fast and efficient, sealing doors, collecting phones, hard drives, even the stenographer's machine. Gentry tried to object. You can't— Sir, Laramie cut in. Sit down. He did. She turned to me. Miss Kellerman, the record tied to FILELIGHT 12 is hereby sealed under federal protection. Your employment status has been reinstated with full clearance. Your service record will reflect no disciplinary history. Barrett let out a quiet breath next to me, but I didn't react. I kept my eyes on Laramie. Your mother's estate is to be returned to you in full, she continued, including all financial and property transfers. You are the sole beneficiary from the back. My father stood. This is outrageous, he said, his voice tight and rehearsed. I filed a legal challenge under Pennsylvania code. That precedent doesn't just vanish. Laramie didn't even glance at him. Mr. Kellerman, you are welcome to file objections with the Justice Department, but I'll warn you, this is no longer about inheritance law. You've entered a federal investigation zone. Your civil leverage is gone. He looked around like someone might back him up. Nobody did. Not even Marlene, who sat frozen, her fingers clenched around her handbag like it might protect her. Laramie turned back to me. You knew it would trigger something? I didn't know who'd show up, I said. Only that someone would. She nodded once. It worked. FILELIGHT 12 was a dormant phrase linked to a redacted operation. You dropped it in a public setting. That forced a sweep. I leaned forward. So someone's been suppressing the record? Not just yours, she said. Others. Dozens of flagged investigations with similar characteristics, patterns, misfiled evidence, blocked communications, all tied to the same internal network. And the explosion, engineered. We have partial confirmation from a forensic team in Quantico. The signatures match a known sabotage model used in military contractor environments. Never domestic. Until now. Behind me, I heard the sound of a box snapping shut, the court clerk's workstation getting sealed and tagged by one of the agents. Laramie stood and stepped down from the bench, walked over to me like this was a conversation in a hallway. "We've opened a covert file," she said quietly. "It goes deeper than your crew." "You are just the most visible." I didn't respond. She handed me a sealed envelope. "You'll want to read this, and you'll want to be careful who you trust next." My father was still standing, staring at the floor like it had answers written in the grain. He didn't look up as they collected his files. Didn't move when two agents took Marlene aside and asked her to confirm the origin of several emails. She just nodded, face pale. Within minutes, the courtroom was half empty. The public was gone. The reporters, too. All pushed out by federal order. Barrett leaned toward me. "Well, that's one way to win." I stood slowly, envelope in hand. "It's not a win yet." She looked at me. "But it's a start." Yeah, it was a start. And the people behind FILELIGHT 12, they just lost their cover. They put him in one of the holding rooms behind the courtroom. Plain tile floor, bolted down chairs, that humming fluorescent light that always made people look older than they were. I stepped in. The door clicked shut behind me. He didn't stand, just sat there with his elbows on the table like he'd been waiting years to say something and suddenly forgot how. "Say it," I told him. His eyes were red around the edges, but his voice came out clear. "I took the money." Of course he did. He rubbed his hands together like they were dirty. They approached me after the explosion, said if I signed the agreement, you'd avoid a criminal charge, that the Bureau wouldn't blacklist you, but they'd quietly push you out. No prison, just ruin. "And you believed that?" He looked up. I didn't know what else to do. "You were halfway to being court-martialed, Dana." The optics were poison. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "So you gagged yourself with hush money instead of asking your daughter what really happened." His jaw flexed. "I thought I was protecting you." "No," I said. "You were protecting yourself. From embarrassment, from being the father of the woman who didn't crawl out of that fire with a headline-friendly story." He looked away. I stepped forward. 4 people died in there. I carried one out who never walked again. I burned my hand trying to pull Palmer from under steel so hot it fused to his vest. "And you thought the answer was to sign a non-disclosure and hand them the knife?" He didn't respond. "That was my team. I still see their faces. I know what their families buried, what they never got told." His voice dropped. "I didn't think it'd go this far. It always goes this far." He finally looked up. "It's not over, Dana." "You stirred something?" I narrowed my eyes. "Who?" "I don't know names." They don't give you names, but they talked like they owned the system. Like agencies were just checklists to them. "Then why are you telling me this now?" "Because someone's going to come looking again. Not for justice, for cleanup." He meant it. That was the part that got me. The fear in his voice wasn't for me. It was for himself. The door opened behind me. Laramie stepped in, calm as ever, folder in hand. "Time's up." My father stood, slow, looked at her, then back at me. "I wish I'd done it different," he said. "You didn't." She waited until he was gone before speaking. "We found it." I didn't ask what. She handed me the folder. "Your case wasn't just mishandled. It was rerouted. Your tribunal records were scrubbed from internal servers, replaced with falsified testimony, altered timestamps, sealed memos. How far does it go? We've already confirmed ties to 3 other civilian trials. 2 were criminal defense, 1 was probate, same signatures. Same manipulation." I stared at the folder in my hands. "So it's coordinated. It's orchestrated," she said. "And whoever's running it doesn't mind burning people alive to keep it buried." I didn't go home. Instead, I drove 2 hours north to a quiet strip of land just outside Harrisburg, where the memorial park sat behind a chain-link fence and an old firehouse that got converted into a public recreation center. No crowds, no flowers. Just 6 low bronze plaques mounted on a curved stone wall. No names, just initials, badge numbers, and the year they died. The official story didn't give them much more than that. I walked the gravel path slow, boots crunching. The air smelled like cut grass and motor oil. Kids played basketball a block away. None of them had a clue what this place meant. I stopped at the wall and knelt down, pulled the small pouch from my jacket pocket. Stitched canvas, old and scorched. I opened it carefully. 6 stones inside, each heat blackened and rough-edged. I'd taken them from the site 3 days after the fire on my last walk through the wreckage. I laid them down, one by one, for Simmons, Beck-Tansey, Hines, Torres, Palmer. My team, my responsibility. I didn't say anything. No prayer, no speech. Just the sound of wind cutting through the fence and a memory pressing down on my chest like weight. Footsteps behind me, soft, deliberate. I didn't turn. Laramie said, "You've been carrying them?" "Yeah." She stood beside me, arms crossed, watching the stones. They taught us in training to mark our fallen with something quiet, something permanent. I stood up. They didn't fall. They were targeted. She nodded. And now we know. There was a pause. Then she handed me another envelope, lighter this time. "Something new?" "A proposal," she said. "Off the books. We've greenlit a task force. Small, mobile, covert. I want someone who's already seen behind the curtain, someone who can recognize the pattern before it repeats. You want me to run it? You already do. You just don't have the badge for it yet." I looked down at the stones. "I'm not interested in a desk job." "This wouldn't be one," she said. "It's forward-facing. Evidence gathering, black bag work. You pick the team." I turned the envelope over in my hand. "And what do we call this unit?" "That's up to you." She started to walk away, then stopped. "You don't have to say yes today." But we both knew I didn't need time. I opened the envelope on the drive home. Inside, one authorization sheet, 3 blank clearance badges, and a flash drive with a red seal stamped across the label. Night Trace, or Tier 2. I didn't hesitate. The first recruit was Len Harding, former Bureau surveillance tech. His cousin, Hines, died in the FILELIGHT 12 blast. Len left the agency a month later and had been working retail security ever since. Brilliant mind, wasted in a parking lot camera booth. He didn't even ask questions, just nodded and said, "Tell me when and where." Next was Mariah Santos, medic, blacklisted after she challenged the official report on a separate training fire that looked a little too familiar. Quiet, serious, has a burn scar along her left calf. Same pattern as mine. She took the badge from my hand and said, "It's about time." 3 others came after, each with something that didn't sit right, each with some distant tie to one of my 6. We called the group Echo Vigil. Not a unit, not a task force, a line in the dirt. Our mission was simple: find out who ordered the cover-up behind FILELIGHT 12 and make sure it never happened again. Not to us, not to anyone. The first file hit my inbox 2 days later. Heavy redactions, names blacked out, locations scrubbed. But the patterns were familiar. Coordinated code mismatches, tampered air pressure logs, thermal anomalies, comms interference. Not just another accident, another setup. They called it a fire in a textile warehouse in Omaha. But I knew better. Same template, same hand behind the curtain. This wasn't cleanup. This was war, and someone had declared it years ago. Before we launched, I made one last stop. Drove to the house I grew up in, not to go inside, just to leave something behind. I stepped onto the porch, opened my jacket, and pulled out a small, jagged piece of blackened concrete. Fused rebar still ran through one side. I left it on the windowsill of my father's study. No note, no message. He'd know exactly where it came from and exactly what it meant.